all the details. So in the meanwhile, enjoy the drinks. I'll turn on, oh, thank you very much. Turn on the video and we'll smoothly start. Mm-hmm. Sure. Mm-hmm. Okay.
It was locked.
Good.
So I thought this,
Very good. And this one, I think it's on. Then everything should be working. Mm-hmm. So, my dear friends, welcome everyone. While the drinks are passing out, I want to greet you, and especially I want to give a special thanks to different of my friends and people that I know who were friends for a long time and didn't see each other at least for 3 years. Right now, currently during the Corona time, I decided to stay in Asia, to stay in India. And I spent 2.5 years living in India, in Goa, in the Himalayas, and then eventually live right now in Thailand. All of this area, it's where I am. So, and during this time, of course, many things have changed, and some things stay unchanged. And today we'll speak on a topic which in English language, I think in Estonia, hasn't yet been spoken at all. And it's the topic about the most popular mushroom in the world. Amanita muscaria, it's not only the most popular mushroom, it is the most recognized mushroom. It is the most photographed mushroom in the world. And by being so popular, arises a logical question. How come a poisonous mushroom is so popular? How come even when you use your phone, the smile or the emoji for a mushroom is Amanita muscaria? There's some kind of story behind it, right? And Amanita muscaria, it carries such an ancient history that I will try to just share some glimpses. If to say a couple of words about myself before I'll go into the topic of my Amanita. My name is Vadim. I come from here, from Estonia. The last 12 years I'm following my shamanic path of development, and which means live a very active life, not only, let's say, social, but also in gathering the knowledge. In the last 12 years, I did more than 300 journeys, physical journeys to other countries to gather different type of knowledge, so to bring back in Estonia the roots of shamanism and to help it to come back. And it was so interesting that I was traveling, trying different, let's say, plants of power, like ayahuasca or yopo or peyote or magical mushrooms and many others that all have a certain connection to the spiritual world. And what a big discovery came that after 10 years of my search all around the world, finally came the moment when I discovered about the mushroom which I see growing from my childhood, just in our forest, just everywhere. The story about Fly Agaric Mushroom. The story about the most recognized mushroom that the human culture knows. And eventually, when I started to dig into this topic, I was very lucky because on my path I met a mycologist. His name is Mikhail Vishnevsky. He is the main mycologist of Russia. You can partly call him like Paul Stevens, only Russian edition, who has studied this mushroom for almost 20 years. He went to the villages and to areas of Siberia and made his researches about gathering all of the pieces which are left about using the mushroom. Why exactly Siberia? The last nation which was using Amanita muscaria in their culture on a daily basis were the Chukchas. Chukchas, it's a nation which is quietly very similar if you know Native American Indians in Canada. Then by their behavior, their, let's say, culture, they're very similar. And they were a nation which in the Imperial Russia was trying to conquer them for 250 years. 250 years, this uneducated tribe of people who were just fighting against the Tsar because they didn't want to give their land away, They didn't want to give away their culture. They wanted just to live how they live. And they were the last nation in the world which was using Amanita in their daily basis rituals and preparations. They were actually the only nation that back then who were making even wars, going to other territories just to gather Amanita Muscaria. And their warriors were very strong, their shamans were very developed, and eventually those warriors, they could lie down in snow for 20, 40 hours without a move. So eventually there was no meaning in fighting them. For 250 years, not a single army which came there could succeed. And eventually how they were destroyed was through diplomacy. The same as with the Native Americans, Canadians, they just became friends with the West, or here with the Tsar, and they started to bring, through their cultural development, alcohol. Alcohol for northern people is not a substance that we would use. Our body didn't develop a bacteria which dissolves easily alcohol. That's why the northern nations are very quickly addictive towards it. And that's why in Finland, for example, there's such a high amount of alcoholics. It's simply because the body is not made for that. And that's why they keep such high prices. And eventually, through this, they destroyed the culture and they started to destroy this knowledge. In the 20th century, it was like totally destroyed. All of the leftovers of the shamans, of the knowledge, all of the books, all of the tradition vanished until the end. In other parts of the world, this destruction was already started in the 16th century. So from the 16th century, there's a very strong focus on destroying the knowledge about this mushroom. Why is it so important for such high people to destroy knowledge just about the mushroom? Well, here we need to a little bit, I'll step aside and explain and give my small respect towards the mushroom world, that mushrooms, it's a totally different type of living being. We usually, when we think about type of life forms on the planet, we think about the plants and we think about living beings. But we forget that there is a kingdom which is far more older than the plants or the living beings. And that is the mushroom kingdom, the fungus. Fungus was here 4 billion years ago. Fungus was here who helped to develop land so that the plants would start to grow. They're the ones who help to dissolve the plants and the animals when they die. When we're born, inside of us, we already have spores of mushrooms. Here where we are, there are a million spores of mushrooms. They're everywhere. And they're always here. And it doesn't matter, does the human know that, acknowledge that or not? It is just like this. It is the type of living being which creates life form and destroys life form. It is the bridge. And eventually, in this kingdom, there is a very specific mushroom which was specially created as the one who will speak with humans, the one that will create the bridge between the human consciousness and all of the knowledge of the fungus. And this mushroom was from all of the time Amanita Muscaria. This is the most ancient mushroom that humanity has ever used for its benefits. If you study a little bit the mushrooms, for example, psychedelic mushrooms, imagine that in this kingdom there's over 1 million of kinds of mushrooms. And there are mushrooms that are only psychedelic to humans. They're not psychedelic to animals. The other type of mushrooms, they're, for example, psychedelic only to deers or to a specific type of animals. So the mushroom kingdom, it creates its specific bride of mushrooms of connection with different type of living beings on human planet. And that's why Amanita Muscaria, it is so colorful. It has the points. It has that what attracts attention of any human when he walks in the forest. It's something what automatically there's a recognition. If you don't want, you always notice Amanita Muscaria. As eventually in our history and in the background, we know that this mushroom, just the name of it was changed many times. The name was hidden in many folklore stories. In different countries, it was called differently. Because eventually this mushroom was only used by, let's say, the high officials, the kings, the priests, because for them, they know all material, this is only for a time. The most interesting is your own consciousness, because here you get access to a totally different level. So eventually, this tradition is so long that we have right now anthropological scientific evidence that even in Christianity, that aspect, what made it unique, was the aspect that they were using in their ceremonies and rituals, the blood and the bread of Christ. If you take Amanita and you put it into water, it becomes like wine. It becomes red. If you dry Amanita, it becomes dry as bread. It starts to look, because of its color, as if it's like dried bread. And eventually, in Christianity, until today, they're eating the flesh of Christ and drinking the blood of Christ. But nobody understands what is the meaning. Because many think, oh, it's an old pagan tradition, etc. Well, yes, it's a pagan tradition, but it's about eating the mushroom. Because eventually, what does the mushroom? It allows you just to connect with your soul and to connect through the soul with your spirit. Because if you look on the pictures which were found in Vatican and etc. about the first Christianity, they have the mushroom even with the story with Adam and Eve. That plant of wisdom, we think it's an apple, but it's not written down anywhere, that actually that fruit which was giving the wisdom, which allowed to distinguish and make a free choice, that was Amanita. And eventually, they show a lot, especially in the beginning of Christianity, how, well, there's usually like a dragon, or there's some kind of lizard or something, where they would show that the human has the victory over that being. That's a metaphor that all of us inside of us have this being. This being is reflected through our reptilian brain. Our bodies, physical ones, they have the genetics, which is structured that we have the spine brain. And our main part of the brain, it starts with the reptilian, then there's the main part, and then there's the cortex. So before we get anything here, it first goes through the filter of the reptilian brain. The reptilian brain has inside of it all of the programs which, let's say, science likes to call animal instincts. It is the place where we have fear, where we have anger, where we have emotions, where we have manipulations. It is that exactly part of the voice with which we have often conflicts inside of our head. The one that wants to be lazy, the one that wants to put the responsibility on the world, the one that is afraid. All of this, mostly, all comes from the reptilian brain. So what happens that when you use Amanita Muscaria, it has more than 15 healing benefits that we know today, elements inside of it. But the most important, which has the biggest interest for us in understanding how it works, it's muscimol. Muscimol, it's an ingredient, it's an element that has impact on gamma receptors. Gamma receptors are the main parts between our brain that connects the main part with the reptilian brain. In other words, when you're using Amanita Muscaria, you get muscimol, and your gamma receptors become, let's say, healed. And the impact of the reptilian brain lowers down in 25 times. In 25 times, reptilian brain becomes peaceful. You don't have those conflicts inside of your head. You don't have those voices. You become just yourself. There's no conflict inside of you when you need to do something. There's no argument inside of your head how to achieve something, because we know the answers. Many answers we know to our lives. But it's that instant conflict inside of us where we fight with our soul against our brain, which creates distortion. And once you start to work with Amanita, it allows you to feel centered, to feel grounded. Amanita has absolutely no psychedelic effects. The main focus of this mushroom is to help the human to succeed in his physical form here right now. That the human can get control over his own avatar, over his own powers. And through that, eventually, when a human has connected with his avatar, with his soul, he becomes something, as is called godly, which has absolutely no impact of animal instincts. Through which, in old Christianity, they always showed that they were defeated the beast. The beast is exactly all of the animal genetics and all of the animal instincts which are carved into part of our reptilian brain. Once the human overcomes them, he becomes a true human. And to become, you need to heal. And all of the world, what it tries to do, it tries to lower away our attention from ourselves and to focus it on the outside world. So eventually, Amanita was used in all those old times, and eventually if you will use it like they did in Christianity, that you would go on Saturday, you would drink a little bit Amanita microdosing and eat some mushroom, this would make that during the week you would become very centered. You wouldn't have the manipulations from your instincts, from your fears. You don't have conflicts. You can easily do everything what you want to. And this is why Amanita was called the king of all mushrooms. This is his title for over 20,000 years between all shamans around the world. He's the king. That's it. Nobody compares. Everything rest is more childish, because the rest, it can bring you to spiritual world, it can open you things. But Amanita, it's very straight and simple. And it wants for the human to succeed in this physical world and not to travel somewhere. So for this reason, 3 years ago, I started my personal study of this mushroom. It took me over 10 years of testing, or Amanita was testing me, until we connected. And of course, the journey from that moment, once I connected with the mushroom, to now, no, it is uncomparable. I traveled all around the world. I met so many developed people, you don't imagine. And yet, Amanita is the one who just overcomes everything. And if to speak about the understanding how it works, then a person who just simply eats Amanita muscaria and the person who communicates and gives commands, the difference of effect can vary more than 100 times. Amanita itself, it's not a magic pill. You are the magic pill. Only with your allowance for healing, for change, for achieving something, is that what allows the energies and the spirits to come to you. If you don't ask, nobody will help. If a person is not communicating with the mushroom and he eats Amanita, yes, he will be peaceful, he will have clarity. But once the microdosing period ends, if the person didn't change his actions, he will eventually come back to his reality where he was. But if the person asks for help, if he asks for guidance, if he asks for a change, then Amanita comes out and starts to guide. You feel its presence with you on the inside. You see the presence on the outside. And every question that you ask, every question, the answer will be given. So eventually, this is one of the most, let's say, effective tools for people who are trying to change their lives. The ones who want to become happy, the ones who want to let go maybe of old life, addictions, problems, stress, depression, nightmares, anything. When you use Amanita and you ask to help it, it will assist you to work it through. And because you're peaceful, you can finally look inside of you. You're not afraid, because those emotions won't overcome you. You will have the opportunity to work everything through. And eventually, uh, about 1.5 years ago, I started a course in Russian language for the Russian audience about how effectively to work with Amanita. Currently, it is the 15th, let's say, course is happening. So there's over 150 people which are shared the wisdom on how to work with it, and also with who together we made a lot of very cool discoveries how to more effectively to work with the mushroom. And the results of the people and the participants is just fascinating, or you can say magical. And the magic only happens by those people who requested magic. If you don't request it, nothing is given. Nobody will give you. Because when you speak it, you, first of all, you program your brain, because your brain is like a computer. Everything what you say becomes part of it. And secondly, higher spirits and energies, imagine like this, that you're approaching a game developer that can change anything in the game which we call life. You can change everything, but the game developer will only change what the player asked to change. You understand? This is its simplicity. No question, no request, let's say only health and energy. But if you ask and request and you follow, unbelievable things happen very, very fast. This mushroom is fully connected not only with our planet, but also with other universes. And this mushroom is connected when we consume it not only with our consciousness, but it's connected with everything around. Because I told you, everywhere are fungus. Everything is energy. So we can perform unbelievable results. Now I'll just share one of the stories. One of my participants, which really touched me. That was my 48th participant. And I took him, I usually take 1-2 people for free who really want to heal, but let's say don't have finances. And eventually he wrote me such a big letter where he shared his story that he really wants to participate, but he doesn't have money, and that in truth that he is an, crippled, that he is an invalid of the first category. And he shared a story that he fell down from the 14th floor and survived. And that he is right now laying in the bed, and he found information about Amanita, and he really wants to heal. He really wants to have a change. And we started, and once we started, then about 1.5 months later after the course and our work, it was such a beautiful feedback, such a emotional, because he was writing that I was lying in bed for like 4 or 5 years. I had operations where they were cutting out a piece of my flesh because when you don't stand up, the blood gets stuck, and then eventually part of your body has to be cut off. And now I'm not in Moscow. I'm now in St. Petersburg. This was my dream for over 20 years, to move to the city. And I'm not laying anymore in bed. I'm already on a wheelchair, going to different events and also visiting my friend's lecturer, Mikhail. And that his life totally changed from the one where nobody could support, believe, where he found the strength inside of him. Because the only magic that a person could receive is what he asks for. People say he was lucky. Luck doesn't exist. Luck is an excuse for people who don't understand how life works. There's no luck. There's always decision, request, and actions. And if you request, act, you will get results. So simple. And the greatest actions that we forget to do is with our own consciousness. This is the only thing that matters. Because everything what is here, this is how the world structures. If you feel inside of yourself tired, angry, then it will always reflect on all of your actions. Doesn't matter which good actions you're doing. If you're not happy and you're still acting, you won't create any results. Not for the people and not for yourself. But when you're happy, then no matter what you do, it will bring happiness. It will bring results. In other words, it doesn't matter what we think. It matters how we feel here. And if you feel bad, then it's time to take care of yourself. It's time to stop thinking about the world around you, about friends, family, business, and start to think about the only important thing for you in this life. And it's you, your soul. Not to be afraid to finally to connect with yourself. Not to be afraid finally to be yourself, to know what brings you happiness, who you are. Just to allow yourself to be who you are. And once, a person, I just did a lot of different types of businesses. Like on my shamanic path, I was kind of doing in a hidden way, and I worked more than in 15 business fields, 5 public ones, including like diplomacy and etc. And I can tell you, I know what it means to work and to work hard. I very perfectly know. And I can tell you with 100% confidence that results come not from actions about how many things you do, but about your self-satisfaction with yourself and how happy you are. The more happy you are, the more energy you have inside of you, the more quicker and easier works everything. And on the opposite, if you're empty inside and you have no energy, and even if you're doing a big amount of actions, it doesn't bring results because the soul is not happy. We as humans, we have lost our connection with our souls. When we're small, we remember that. And that's why it's, for many people, one of the most happiest moments of their lives. When they could go to the courtyard, play with other kids, and just enjoy the summer house of their grandmother or grandfather, and just to be themselves. But then we go to kindergarten, school, university, and what do they steal from us? They steal from us ourselves. We stop playing the games we want to play. We stop asking ourselves, what do I want? We stop putting ourselves on the first spot, and they make us to adapt to the kindergarten, to the school, to the system, to the family. It's always about breaking the person behavior of his freedom into a specific way, or how to say, in a specific game. And eventually, until the person won't find the energy inside of him to break free, the body of people, most are used not for what the soul has came for, but it is used by the system, where people just do what they don't want to do, but they do it because everybody are doing it. Like, nobody thinks that they matter. Nobody thinks I'm important. Everybody thinks everybody's opinion is important. Or the government, or the family, or the business, or the friends. But nobody is asking himself the question, how important am I for myself? Do I love myself? How do I feel? Am I happy inside? And if I'm not happy, then why I'm not happy? What I'm doing wrong, or where I'm lying to myself. So eventually, this is exactly the thing to which Amanita really helps to come, is to come to your own soul. Because I was in India for almost 2.5 years, where I performed a lot of healings with people, especially in Goa. Well, you don't imagine how many different stories there are with people there. Because there's also a lot of drugs, there's a lot of cops, and there's a lot of scooters and motorbikes and cows and dogs and broken roads. And eventually, I had to help and heal many people. And it is there where I have, let's say, made my own researches under which I can say with confidence. First of all, when a person falls down and has an accident, it's never an accident. It's never an accident. Because if a person falls down, it happens for the reason which requested the soul. So imagine the avatar can control or our soul, or our avatar can control the mind, with the programs which were implemented in it. So when the soul is not satisfied with the actions of the avatar, that the person is doing some kind of shit or doing something wrong, then the soul feels it and it doesn't agree. And if the person is not listening, eventually the soul creates pain. If the pain is ignored, then the soul, it creates an accident. An accident where the person will fall down and he will hit. And the hit which will come on the body, it's very exact and specific. As I told you, there's no coincidences. There's such an ancient knowledge called Ayurveda. In Ayurveda, they not only work with the herbs, they also work with the reason result, why sicknesses come, what is the story behind it. And they show that every sickness, it's a reflection of a spiritual lesson that the soul is going through. And if the soul understands the conflict, it heals. If it doesn't understand the lesson, it gets even more sick. So eventually, first there's pain of the soul, we feel it. We ignore it, then it vibrates and it starts to create some kind of pain in a part of the body. That you would get some kind of a disease. Maybe your shoulders will start to hurt or here and there. If this is ignored, then after pain comes the sickness, and after the first sickness comes the chronic sickness. So when a person gets cancer, it's nothing fresh or new. Cancer typically means, very simple, that the person is very unhappy. His soul is very unsatisfied with the actions and the life that the human is doing. And for the soul, it's easier to delete this character and to go for next reincarnation. Because it doesn't waste any more time. It doesn't want to gather any more bad karma. Because eventually the soul will have to work it through. So through that reason, it just self-liquidates. We have this opportunity. Of course, the mind will never think about it, but the soul is in control eventually. The soul is the main player here. Nothing is real here. You came here with your soul, and you will go away here, not with your family, not with the gold or silver or whatsoever. You will leave this place just with your soul. Everything that is real, what you will carry away, is what you experience here. This is partly why I like to make comparison with modern time games. It's literally like a game. When a person comes to a computer, he sits down and he goes to that digital world. The person plays, everything is real for him there. But eventually, when the person at the computer, he knows that it's only there real. The same way our soul knows that this is just a game, when our mind should never know it. And eventually, the soul comes out, the player comes out, and what does he have? Is that experience which he got during this period of time of playing this game or living the life that we call reality. So eventually, when the soul is not controlling the avatar, that is when people get into troubles, problems. He gets sick, he falls from scooters and accidents. And I'll just share a simple understanding. If any of your friends ever has an accident or you yourself, always analyze. When it's the right part of the body, the hit came, then it's connected with male energy. When it's on the left side, it's female energy. So let's say a person fell down and he hit it. His arm, his foot, and part of his head. What does it symbolically mean? If it's on the right side, then it means, let's say, I'll give an example. Like a guy fell down, he really strongly hit his knee. He had a scratch on his face, and it was on the left arm. And then eventually, I just spoke with him and say, how do you think, what is the reason? It's like, a dog came out, and that's why I fell down. Saying, well, let's analyze. So it's left side says definitely you have problems with your woman energy. Do you have a relationship? He's like, yes, I had a relationship, and I just okay, you're when it's connected with feet, it's connected with fundament, and knees are connected with flexibility. So I said, so you were not flexible, you were just, He's like, yeah, I wasn't flexible. And it's like, so you were trying to control it. It's like, yeah, I was trying to control it. That was the arm. And eventually you saw it fully in your face. You understood the problem that you were acting in such as like, yes, I understood it. Why then you continue to act? And he says, I don't know. It's like, well, here you are. This is what you did. Faster learn the lessons, so the lessons won't repeat. So everything is very logical. Just this part of the knowledge is like saved by the Chinese, by the Indian old scriptures. In our times, psychosomatics is part of the knowledge which shares also the wisdoms on how a problem, a pain, a sickness, an accident are connected with our spiritual growth and is connected with our soul. That everything is made by our soul. And we're the only ones who carry the responsibility for it. So, eventually, let's speak a little bit practically. How to use Amanita, how to work with it. As you understand, even right now, I shared so many stories, and it's an infinite amount of very interesting information connected with this topic. And, but I'll share the main highlights, and at a certain point, we'll just go questions and answers, and we will go into it. So, first of all, Amanita Muscaria, the best way to describe it, it's our tradition, which is saved until today in Christmas. So in Christmas, we have a story from our childhood that there's the Santa Claus who comes and brings the gifts. And the parents are usually the Santa Claus, and the children have to write down what do they want to get. And this is the tradition. We played this game from our childhood, but eventually nobody asked the question, but from where it comes from. How come it's exactly on Christmas? And what is Christmas in ancient times? What it was? So you have to know that the impact, especially of late Christianity, which was abused, a lot of old celebrations which we had connected with the cycles of the moon and the sun, they were changed. And at the same time, there were implemented other ceremonies or other celebrations upon our old times, or let's say day of rituals. Summer, winter solstice are two of the strongest, the most ancient days when all of our ancestors in the past and also in the future are being connected with our spirit. And in these days, it is the most strongest moment when you can make a ritual, discover information, or implement programming for your own matrix, for your own reality. So in ancient times, like in Siberia, how did it look like? That right now it's a period when everybody are gathering Amanita, and once you gather them, you dry them. And also if somebody is, people have asked me how is better to dry them. So first of all, when you gather them, you usually keep the caps. When I go to the forest to gather them, I first take and eat the first two legs that I find, just for the connection. I give a prayer, just eat. You gather the caps, and eventually we're drying the caps. The caps can be dried the easiest if you have a dehydrator, where you can dry them. Then you use the temperature 35 degrees. This is it. And you leave them for 24 hours until they become crispy. If you don't have a dehydrator, most important, put them on strings that it wouldn't touch the ground so that the moisture could go away. And then you would dry them maybe for 3 days until they get dry. After they're dry, we put them into a vacuum, into a jar or into a bag that doesn't have any air. And we put them aside away into a dark place for 2 months. And eventually what this does, that inside of Amanita Muscaria, as I told you, there's more than 15 healing elements. And there's one element, if you use fresh Amanita, you might feel a little bit dizzy. And this element is called ibotenic acid. Ibotenic acid, it's one of the components in fresh Amanita, but when you dry it, the ibotenic acid transforms into muscimol. So by drying it and putting away into a dark place without no air allows to go through such a process that the the Amanita Muscaria becomes 20–30% stronger. And after that, you can already use it. And using it, let's say, how did they use in old times? So typically it was the shaman. Everybody would come to him, all of the village, one by one, and they would say their request, they would ask their questions, and he would sit and remember, like from every person, he's like 3–4 questions. Then afterwards, Christmas starts, the period of the winter solstice. He would go into a ritual which could last for him for a week, where he would just eat a lot of amanitas, be always in the state of half here, half there, and just gather all of the answers. And then afterwards, once he comes back, all of the village comes, and one by one, how they were asking, he gives them one by one in the same way the questions, the answers, like a program. Like how they ask, that's how Amanita answers, and that's why in the same sequence they come and get the answers. So for that reason, this tradition, ancient one, which we had over for 20,000 years, this is how it was reflected in our times in Christmas, that children are writing what they want. Because every person was asking the shaman or Amanita something important for themselves, something what they want. Would it be health? Would it be knowledge? Would it be a change of reality? Anything. But the request has to be. If there's no request, no help is given. This is called personal freedom and responsibility. You never touch a person who is not asking for help. You never help a person who is not asking for help. If humans have problems and traumas and they still try to help people who don't want help, they get themselves problems. But the spirits, they will never touch a person who doesn't want it. And they will never touch a person who doesn't request it. So eventually, in our modern times, this is how it was back then. In nowadays, I can say for sure that the most effective way of using Amanita Muscaria is in microdosing way. Microdosing is the most effective way how you can connect with the spirit of the mushroom and get the benefit not only through one journey, but get that benefit through the whole month. Because Amanita Muscaria, it has an increasing effect, which means when you're, let's say, are starting to microdose, then the first 7–10 days, it can be differently. No, it can vary. Because when you request healing, in the beginning, you will start maybe to see the tiredness which you were ignoring, and you will want to sleep more during the day. Somebody has a cleansing, and they start to go to the toilet 3–4 times a day, and surprised from where all this comes. So the first 7–10 days, it works. It can work individually. But after, once this process of healing has started and the transformation already began, we all get the same effect. And the effect is that in the morning when you take the microdose, it works like coffee, or even 2 cups of coffee. It will just make you boost your energy. You will have very direct, like this sharpness, and you will have absolutely no inside conflicts. It's like, what I have to do? Look at the list. Like, you have absolutely no problems in focusing your avatar, your energy on what you need. And this is priceless. This is truly priceless for people who want to achieve results. This is why this mushroom was always a mushroom for grown-ups. It's not for kids. Kids want to see psychedelic experiences, want to see spirits, etc. But a soul that is a grown-up, it wants to reach results. He wants to reach change in his life on the things that he wants to have. That the result is truly that measurement that I do for myself. Do I control reality, or the reality is controlling me? If I'm getting the result on which I focus, I understand, yes, my knowledge and my practice works. If I don't get what I want, I analyze which actions I did, which didn't allow me to reach what I want. And Amanita becomes an unbelievable ally that can just take care of a person in the most unbelievable ways. And maybe a story from my side about how he, like Amanita, really helped me and saved me. I had a situation in India. It was like during the Corona times that I decided I want to organize like a special place where all of the, let's say, our international community could come, where they would meet artists, healers, and that it would be a place, let's say, of support and healing. I organized and made a deal with one Indian businessman and took like a new hotel for rent to develop this. And eventually we started. And along the way, I did a couple of mistakes, and eventually it became more quicker as a psychiatric hospital rather than become a place of true healing and lightness. Because in Goa, well, there's a lot of sick people. There's a lot of people who went through a lot of pain. And eventually, this energy got sucked in a lot faster rather than, let's say, the good people or the strong people could approach. And at one point, from starting such a very positive idea and investing so much energy, so much time, the hotel was called Pushkin. So imagine. I eventually had there and gathered, met people from all around of Russia, and I heard the most horrific stories about the true life stories, what people have to live there through in the villages, in the inside part of Russia. And it's truly horrific. Like people have very big traumas, and they really don't know how to overcome them. And eventually, by partly being open and wanting, like to help and heal everyone, it started to suck me in because sick people, they bring sick people, let's say. And eventually, it all, when I looked 5 months later, I was already like, there were 6 months was the project. For 5 months, I was sleeping 2-3 hours a day. That was the average. Like. And eventually, when I looked at the project, like 5 months later, I understood where it brought. Like I had there staying, or during this time and period of the work of the hotel, I had there people who were in jail. I had there drug dealers of the past. I had prostitutes. I had even people who were in sex slavery and they didn't even understood it. And eventually, the cherry on top was when I was told that there is a pimp in the hotel from the past. And you cannot imagine how this made me angry. And eventually, even with the best wishes, but with forgetting about yourself, everything can go on a path that logically looks logical, but you feel horrible inside. You're tired, but your mind tells you, I took this responsibility, like I need to help that, I need to finish this. Being stuck in a swamp where you don't want to be, and yet so much responsibility that you don't even imagine how to let go. And at one point, we just reached the height, and I took Amanita Muscaria. I just drove to the jungles and to my special shamanic place, went through the jungle and made a ritual there with Amanita. And eventually the ritual was very strong. I got a very strong cleansing. And in the morning at 7 a.m. when I got up, like my request to Amanita was that I really had no idea how to finish this. I really understood I have absolutely no energy, no desire, no nothing, like to keep this going or fighting, and eventually I didn't understand how to finish it. And so in the morning I already woke up fresh. During the night it just cleansed me very strongly. I went to swim into like a special nature, like in the jungle, felt myself fresh. And then when I came back to the location, so Amanita has already done everything for me. Because while I was away during this night, there was like a big conflict there. And eventually when I came, all of my things were already standing in front of my door. My friend with whom we met there in Goa from Estonia, exactly that day and that very hour, he was moving from one place exactly to a new area where they rented a very cool house in a very peaceful place. In the jungle with peacocks and everything awesome. So eventually I just take my things, join my friend who is also a shaman, and eventually when we move into the house, no, they took me in with his girlfriend, because I had no energy, I had no money because I invested everything and just it went very bad. And once I come and I'm just walking, I'm thinking, this is just so surreal. Like, here I had this so quickly. And then I just walked in on the bench of this door of the house, and on the first floor, there were 3 such bigger lighters made in the design of Amanita Muscaria. It was the first time when I ever saw any Amanita Muscaria in India. And there were 3 big lighters which were just introducing me and just laughing upon the whole situation and support. And then I just sit down and understood, thank you. Eventually, a question which I couldn't imagine how to solve, it got solved within not even 1 day passed on. As eventually everything started to solve itself, and I started an absolutely, like, let's say, new path. And eventually, this is just a story from my side. As I teach and educate people how to work with it, I have some people who come and travel to the places where I am, no, all around the world. And I have a family who, this is, I would say, I think they'll write themselves the book. But eventually we met, it's one of my participants from the course. She was like from the 2nd course, I think, and she had such good results that she called and asked her husband to check out Amanita and just to have a talk. And eventually, momently, as we talked, he got an invitation to go to India, no, like for business. He never was to India, but he said, it's a sign. So eventually, when he came to India, he did the meeting in Delhi, and then specially came for 3 days to the Himalayas. And we met in the Himalayas and spent some wonderful time. The next moment, we already met 3 months later in Goa, where he brought his family, and for all of them, no, I prepared a very special program of healing and meeting with different specialists, and we had different ceremonies. And already then, it was a very interesting moment that we were sitting, and India and Goa is a very such peaceful place. For the aspect that there's absolutely no military, there's nothing, like there's no, and we were sitting at the sea coastline, and for the first time, in all the time that I was in Goa and in India, first time in my life, I saw a jet flight. And the jet flight was just flying over the sea coastline, just like over the beach. It was just nonsense. And the problem was that the wife, she was originally from Donbass, from the place where the war started at the first part, like 8 years ago, when was the first conflict. And she has momentary reaction of biggest fear, automatic, that the bombs are falling, so she quickly just automatically took the children, like, go down. And these were the symbols, because we're understanding, we got the symbols that Kiev will be bombed, but at the same time, none of us wanted to believe that. And eventually we pushed forward their flight away 1 day, 2nd day, 3rd day, and then they understand, no, like no matter what happens, they need to just to come, take certain things, and eventually just 1 day, this is how long they will stay. I gave my blessings, I gave certain amulets of protection, and they come, that was the 23rd. They came on the 23rd to Kiev. On the 24th, at 8 a.m., they have their flight out of Kiev. And, well, on the 24th, at 5 a.m., on such a symbolic day for our country, at 5 a.m., the bombing starts. And everything starts to fall, but they, compared to all of the rest, they were as if they're ready. They had their luggage prepared. They had everything standing at the door. They had the clothes ready. Their driver was downstairs because he was waiting that he would bring them like to the airport. And eventually they just happened so fast, like doo, doo, doo. They're already in the car going to the border. Then the other driver picks them up and continues to move, while the rest of Kyiv is just like understanding what is happening. And eventually they got out of the country within, I think, the 2 days. They were able just to go out with safety. And eventually it was also such a quite a deep like talk about what it is correctly, like for a man when the war starts, to be part of the war and to protect your land and etc., or to focus on what is important for the man, his family. The only thing what the man actually has to, in my opinion, the only thing what the man has to take care of, he first has to learn to take care of himself, and secondly, about his family, that responsibility on which he carries the highest. And eventually the world is big. Everybody can get here any type of life experience, what the soul wants. Some souls need the experience of war and trauma. Some, as I believe in our countries, we had enough of wars in the past, and our parents and grandparents and etc. had enough of them. So eventually there's always an option and a choice. And when everything happened, it was wonderful that this understanding that there is a freedom of choice and you don't have to follow the crowd, no matter what they tell you, that you can easily follow your path. And through this, everything is wonderful by them. And eventually we met, like, an interesting fact I'll share. So Amanita, from all of the family, when we're making the ceremony, I'm sharing stories about microdosing, but there's also a type of ceremonies like the shamans used to do. And Amanita can show you all of the answers. And sometimes people are not ready for what they ask for, and they get a very strong shock. So my responsibility as the shaman is to create such a field of protection and communication with Amanita that if a person asks too complex questions for which his consciousness or his soul is not ready to see, that it would just fly like this, quickly. That a person would lie down, he thinks 15 minutes pass by, but actually 3-4 hours pass by. And eventually, from all of the family, where the girls were so preparing and they were so focusing on the magic and to see what is Amanita, eventually from all of them, only the man got the answers. And then, and eventually, one of the main reasons was because he asked like 4 exact questions to Amanita. When the girls, one put it like 52 questions, the second one had 64 questions, and the third one had 72 questions. This is how sincerely they approached when I told that you can find out all of the answers to any questions. Well, the consciousness was not ready for that, what they were requesting. So eventually, all of the answers came within, if you don't see it in the ceremony, then usually during the 21 day, you get the answers. Oh, and they got the answers. The experience with the start of the war, with the movement, with everything, it led to such deep spiritual discoveries and conclusions that only to write a book. And eventually we also met in Thailand and already discussed and did the other process of healing. And I right now came from Switzerland, and also we had a meeting there. In other words, Amanita, it has the opportunity to protect and to guide. It has the opportunity of going beyond the rational logic. But it will only work when you're sincere. It only works when you ask. And through this, you open the opportunity. The opportunities, and most important, is then just to do the things that life gives you. To let go quicker of the past, to be more self-centered, to understand what makes you happy, what you truly want with your soul, not with the mind. Don't think what is correct, because the mind will always tell you how it's correct. Most important, you would ask yourself what I want. What brings me happiness? How can I feel happy? What is that thing that doesn't allow me to be happy? Where do I lose my energy? With who I'm now wasting my energy and my time? Who is sucking it away, or where I'm just losing it? And eventually, the main focus is with Amanita that it will start to give you as energy, as control of your consciousness over your own avatar. And at the same time, it will start to create clearance. And how effective it will work for you, it will only depend on you. But all I can say that the more life experience you had, the more interesting it will be for you, the discovery. Because the discovery and finally being able to crystallize your life experience into the reality that you feel and you know you deserve, I think it's priceless. Our happiness is priceless. Our life is priceless. And if we don't value our lives, if we don't value ourselves, if we don't love ourselves, nobody values us, nobody cares, and nobody will be even able to share love with you because the person is closed. So, and this is the free will, the free choice. Or you use your free choice and opportunity of playing in this body, or trust me, somebody will take the control over your avatar and use its energy in its own interests. So there's no middle path. Or you're the slave of the system, or you're the creator of your life. There's no middle. So, as you now understand, the topic maybe was more surprising than many thought. But this is the reason why Amanita came back right now to humanity. It wasn't coming for 100 years because the time wasn't ready. But now, many humans were asking for help from the spirits. Many have shown themselves nicely, and Amanita came back. And came back, first of all, for the people who are already strong, because the people who are strong will benefit from the experience of usage of it most of all. Afterwards, the wave will go to the rest of the people. But the core essence, right now, it came for the strong people who already had their hard paths in their lives and who were following their dreams of their soul and still are following, still want to achieve. So right now, we're going to go to the next phase of, let's say, here, of our lecture. And we'll right now go to the process of question and answers. So a lot of things were shared. And now I'll just give the opportunity to ask any question that arose while we were speaking. Please.
Yeah, thanks a lot. It was awesome. Do you do an English version of your summit?
You mean of the course?
Yeah, the course.
Right now, I will launch it within the next 1 month. As right now, the audience, the English speaking, let's say, I wanted to test everything and to gather the methodology and work it out. And now it's ready. I'm right now already writing a book for which translators to English and German language are waiting once it will be ready to translate it quickly and to publish. Because now it's like a period when a new wave is starting. In the next 3 years, everybody will be quite very amazed how Amanita Muscaria will become so popular and how quickly it will just spread out. So there will be in English a course. We can exchange contacts, and afterwards I'll let you know. And with the course, how I work, it's through online. We make usually streams on Sundays. Sometimes I make question and answers on Wednesdays. And just share the knowledge of the mythology, how you can work with yourself, with your consciousness. It usually happens through a diary. It's the aspect of asking the right questions. Very important to understand how to formulate the questions which are important for you. And eventually, with this every step one day, you get the results And typically how I do with my Russian course, that they just pay for the first month, and afterwards I just keep everybody in the community, and all of the rest of the content which we'll develop can be for free. This is how I'm working still with the Russian audience. So eventually every week it's a specific type of knowledge of a field which you can use for the benefit of your soul, of yourself. And if to explain it very simple, then our soul is playing through 3 bodies. So we're only indicated that we're the physical body. So when you come to a doctor, he's only looking the physical body. For the doctor, in his concept, he's not allowed to think that you have a soul. So eventually he looks only usually the body. But we have 2 more bodies. The second body, it's our emotional body. The emotional body is the area where we feel all the emotions. So if you pay attention in your life with your consciousness, you can be or in your physical body, yeah? When you're running, doing sports, you're totally present. Or we can be in our emotional body, where are all of the emotions which we are living through right now. Or we're in our mental body. And the mental body, it's exactly the place where we have our thoughts, imaginations, past, future, everything that is connected with thinking. This is the mental body. So eventually, with what I work in the course, I educate the art of self-healing, so that you would understand and you would be able to diagnose yourself, to understand where you have your weak points. When you understand that you're doing less work with your physical body, you can simply do practices and things which will eventually help you to recover this energy. If there is problems with emotional body, then you start to work with emotions, you start to focus more self-love upon yourself. You start to create barriers so you would feel comfortable with other people. Or sometimes you throw away people and projects which are not bringing you happiness and results. And of course the mental it happens automatically through making the diary, asking the questions and analysis. Because I want for every person to be individual, independent, strong, and happy. So this is my principle. So eventually, who will have interest, I can afterwards share the Telegram group, and when the time is ready, I'll just invite the people from that Telegram group to form the first English course. But for now, I would say what you can take out, that when you start to work with Amanita, first of all, make a diary, especially at the end of the day or during the day, because our mind is always fooling us, and we shouldn't focus on what we think. But the true answer, or how our soul speaks, is through feelings. So when you're making a diary, pay attention how you feel. How I feel in the morning, how I feel in the day, how I feel in the evening, how I feel myself after having communication with this person, with that person, how I feel myself during the work. Am I happy or not? And you can analyze, you can finally see where your soul agrees and gives you energy, or where you're doing something which is useless for you, where you're just doing it automatically without getting any benefit, without getting any happiness, without getting any results. Quite often it can be compared that, when we're growing up, we have a lot of friends during our lifetime, many who we know from childhood or from school time or university time. And eventually people spend often time with people just for convenience, just because they don't want to look bad. You're my friend, we know each other so long, we went through so much, but actually now it's boring for you to spend time with him. There's no interest for you to discuss the old topics because you're living now and you're focusing on the future. But if you meet with this person, you already are choosing your reality. You have a certain amount of energy that you can invest. Understand it. You have 24 hours, you have a certain amount of energy, and you decide which path will open. And if you invest energy and time into old stories, you'll stay in the old stories, in that old reality. But if you're confident and you just shake it off and focus on the people, the projects, the reality, the events which are at least interesting for you, but best of all, they would inspire you, or you will have people who you can be yourself, You can speak on the topics that are important for you, where you feel yourself happy, where you feel yourself at home. And eventually, everything here, it's just an energetic game for the soul. If you learn your lesson with your soul, everything changes. And that can happen only with this self-analysis and conclusions. So reality often changes not from so much actions as the conclusion that the person gets after the actions. If you make a conclusion of the experience you went through right now, life will change. But if you didn't make the conclusion, the story will come back and will come stronger. And if you ignore it, then the third time will be such an unbelievable story. Because we try to awake ourselves. We try to develop ourselves spiritually here. And if the spirit grows, everything works. If the spirit is not happy, nothing will work. So eventually I inspire everybody when you start to work with Amanita to focus on the only one important thing. Focus on yourself. Focus on understanding what wants your soul. Focus on happiness. Focus on the only thing that matters eventually to you, and you have to remember that, and that is you, your body, your opportunity to play this game called life. And then everything will work, because when we focus our energy not on the outside world, but we finally focus it here, magic happens. We don't lose energy. And if you want to heal, and let's say here, all of us come from the Soviet Union time, when here all of our grandparents went through the war, and this usually creates a lot of trauma. And when a generation doesn't cure the trauma, it is passed on to the next generation and the next generation. It usually takes 5 generations to let go of a trauma that was created during the war. Until, if there's a healer or a person in the family who can heal himself, then this truly creates blessing for the rest of the family, because somebody has to go through it. And eventually, when you heal yourself, this is the only thing which heals others, and especially for the man. The only way how in the family everything could be wonderful and happy, it's only when the man learns to be happy. If the man is not happy and he is pretending, everybody feels that. And that's why, especially for men, it's so important to be centered and to be themselves and to know their power, their strengths, and their fundament. And when the man is happy, everybody around are dancing, and it's easy. And so I hope I answered the question. So, please.
Why is it just like, why is it a man is happy? Why is it can't it be when a woman is happy?
Well, this is, you're asking kind of a small side question. Everybody has to be happy. As the woman, as the man. Just the problem with the man logic, often it's also by women, that everybody adapts to the partner. And adapting to your partner is like putting away your responsibility upon the other person. And rather than to take care of yourself, to become strong and happy, the person waits until somebody will make something special for them. So it's a childish position. The child inside of us doesn't want to do nothing. He says that the world, this is the reason that the world is so cruel, or my parents, or the current economic position, or because of the war, or because childish consciousness. Childish consciousness or subpersonalities are always fighting against the world. And a conscious, grown-up soul, it carries the responsibility and understands if the soul won't take care of itself, nothing will change. So, of that reason, it is so important for everybody to take care of themselves, not only the man. Just in man aspects, why I underlined it, that especially like men are being manipulated from childhood not to listen to their feelings, not to take care of themselves, always to listen what the others want. That the men are given such a concept that if they want to be loved, that they have to prove themselves. And this is totally wrong. This is the mindset which is implemented to slave minds. That the man would feel himself that he is not worthy, through which he has to prove all of his life to everybody, but not to himself. And it leads to nowhere. Nobody will be happy. Even if he achieves big goals, he will still won't feel complete, because the complete feeling of happiness can only start when we start to listen to ourselves and have an honest relationship inside of us. When we start to put our interests higher than anything that is around us happening. Because if you won't take care of yourself, nobody will. But luckily here, Amanita Muscaria, it's exactly that ally who is willing to help. You ask and he will be with you. He will guide you. He will assist you. He will allow you to let go of the inside conflicts. You will have the strength. You will have the power. You will get the answers. Most important, respect it and use this opportunity. Use the opportunity when you're fully energized to do those actions which will change your life. That you will look behind 1 month later and see, like, I don't even imagine myself how it could go any other way. This is how many people feel. Looking back, like, this is unbelievable that I was there. So it's truly magical for people that act. And it gives you the opportunity to act. And people who just eat Amanita, don't make requests, don't work as a grown-up, they just get, a very, very small glimpse of the power that it has. So, and for what I truly respected, that it truly shows that we have such unbelievable power. Everything is here. Everything is here. And that's it. All we have to focus is not on the outside world, but on our own consciousness. And through here, we can solve all of the questions in our lives. We don't have to prove ourselves. We don't have to, we just have to learn to be ourselves. When we are ourselves, we feel happy, we give energy with our soul, and we make the magic real. When we're happy, magic is real. When we're not happy, no magic happens. Only if you ask. And only, let's say Amanita helps everybody, but other plants might not even help, because maybe the person is already too stuck in bad karma, or he doesn't deserve by his actions. So the spirits are usually like choosy. But Amanita, luckily, it is very straight. It listens to everybody. It doesn't filter. If you come with an open heart and soul, it will listen and assist. And for that, he is called the king. Step by step, ladies first.
I'm interested about the microdosing. What's the amount? So like 1 month you should do the microdosing and then pause for some, like another month and then again, or what's the schedule?
So best of all, you have to know that when you start to microdose, usually the first month for everybody it's quite a big surprise. Because once you start working on yourself, you will start to have many things clear. And usually the transformation of a person, it takes like 2-3 months. So let's say you're sick or you're in this work and you're not happy and etc. You start the microdosing, the first month will bring you very strongly like up and will assist you to get out. But the transformation, as let's say we live in this physical world, it usually takes 2 months, 3 months for a person to go through his personal change. So the microdosing most important is usually on the first month, because the hardest is just to try. And in my course, many people, when they feel their energy and how everything is working, they stop after first month. If people feel, you can use it for 2 months and 3 months. It's not an issue. Just usually people who need to use let's say 2-3 months are people who have sicknesses. Like real physical sicknesses, some chronic sicknesses or such pain that you just need to work harder. You just have to know that this body is like a hardware. And every emotion that you didn't share, it's stuck here, somewhere. It doesn't disappear. That's why the bodies are different by people, because how much stuck, different type of energy and emotions and feelings are inside. So eventually, if the person was doing spiritual work upon himself, like usually already after 1 month, it's enough of him. If the person feels that he needs still support and the life is dynamic and the change didn't finish, but maybe it just started for him, use the ally for the next month. And usually, so usually it's 0.3 grams in the morning and 0.3 grams in the evening. In the morning, I usually wake up, drink a glass of clean water, warm one, so to clean my stomach. And afterwards, I make the microdosing and I ask Amanita to help. I ask a specific question. And through this question, I exactly would say open the pathway for understanding. And afterwards, in the evening, let's say here, usually I take it half an hour or 1 hour before the sleep. So if in the morning it helps you to get energized, then in the evening, because we're falling asleep, it helps us to fall asleep. It works like a sleeping pill. And eventually this makes it very effective to use. It's the same substance, just in the mornings it acts active. At the night it helps you to fall asleep. And also with it, during the night, you're going to have wonderful dreams. You will remember them. You're going to see them a lot clearly. Sometimes even the answers come through these dreams. And eventually, to fourth, fifth day, the amount of Amanita inside of the person increases, and you become just very sharp, very peaceful, very straight. And what I love about it, the difference between, let's say, psychedelic mushrooms and Amanita, is that when you're using psychedelic mushrooms, while you use them, even in microdosing, you get the power only while you're under them. With Amanita, everything what you have developed during this period of microdosing, it stays forever with you. Anything what you have developed, any powers, anything, it stays with you. It doesn't roll back. This is one of the big differences also with Amanita towards psychedelic mushrooms, that everything what you have developed, it stays with you. So that's why you analyze yourself and you just understand, are you right now good in controlling your reality? Are you understanding why is this and this happening? Are you knowing your next steps? And if the person knows, he just follows. He just goes. He doesn't have any issues. And if you don't understand yet, when there's a lack of energy and there's like very stressful things which are creating like the pendulum, then we simply can use Amanita on. So typically there comes just your own feeling when it's enough. And it's when you usually forget to microdose, like when you automatically forget to microdose, this means you're already in such a flow that you don't need it. Or for example, you put the mushroom or you taste it. And in the beginning, this is also like when we're small, we so know it perfectly. You remember when we're small, we like to try everything on our tongue. Like anything we see from nature, we try it. So our tongue, it's actually one of the highest level analysis of our body, of all of the chemical components that the plant, the food, anything has. So when you taste and it's tasty for you, then it has some elements strongly that your body needs. And when you got enough of these elements, the taste towards this food would fall down. This is that natural way how we can understand, do we need it or not, by taste. We taste Amanita freshly, it tastes awesome. You did 1 month of microdosing, you'll see the taste for you became more simple. It's not already so enjoyable as it was the first times. And through this, we can just see ourselves. So it's through the consciousness and through the taste. And maybe one more comment that you can, when you're starting to microdose, it's good and it's totally fine that you would eat a little bit more during the first week. Because during the first week, until you're starting, you can eat like half a gram in the morning, half a gram in the evening. It's not an issue. And then when you feel that you already have the power, then you can lower down to that dosage which you want. And also sometimes by ladies who are like sensitive, it's even a small piece of Amanita, it's enough for them, and they don't even need the 0.3 grams. But sometimes, for example, for men who are not sensitive, and many of men are not sensitive because it's destroyed from childhood, they won't even so much notice when they eat 1 gram. But then eventually, towards like the 4th, 5th day, you will just analyze and you will just see, I'm so much more peaceful. I really don't care about those conflicts. And you just see that things don't touch you. You don't go on provocations on which you were connected all of the time. Okay, the lady and then you, sir. Okay?
I have a question about how it mixes up with other substances, other psychedelics or other mushrooms or stuff like that.
Well, as you know, it's the king, so it's very flexible. So I'll share with you such an answer. When you're using nature plants and plants from nature, they're like totally safe to our bodies because the structure of the elements is usually like such a network where all of the elements are quite separated between each other. When we consume them, through that our body can easily take those elements from any type of mushroom or healing that it needs. All of the things that it doesn't need, it just flushes away. This is the structure of nature. When we speak about what humans are given from childhood, it's pharmaceutical. Pharmaceutical is the most healing thing for a human body in a long perspective, because what did they do generally? They just found this one element that, let's say, heals this, and they made a crystal where this element, it's all pressed down to each other of this crystal of this element. So when it gets into our body is not able to, take out this element. And usually about 60% of the pill, not depending on the pill, can be from 30 to 70% of the pill gets stuck in the body. When they made experiments with vitamin C, then those ones, only 1% of those vitamin C, which people eat in pills, is absorbed by the body. 99% is thrown out, but actually a majority of them is being stuck inside of the body. So this is the difference between nature and chemistry. With chemistry, you have to be really careful. Chemistry, when you're mixing things, it can lead to very, very sad results because the body doesn't know. Like if it cannot consume it and it cannot throw it out, and then another component comes, it can make a chemical reaction which will have a very strong and dangerous impact on the body. Then with the mushroom kingdom, it's totally fine to use mushrooms with any type of plants. And Amanita, from my own experience, what it gives, it simply gives you control of anything what you're consuming. So if you use a small microdosing and you take psychedelic mushrooms, you will have, most probably if you desire it, a very controlled spiritual trip. That you will never fall down into bad trip. You will have the control because you have control with your consciousness over the rest of your body. So through that you can control other medicine plants, and you can easily mix it if you have the desire to get the experience with other plants. It's not an issue. The only issue, it's only with chemistry. Chemistry works bad. But nature with nature, perfect. Nature with chemistry, also, it works because nature, it's nature. As I told, if the body doesn't need anything, it just flushes it away. And it cannot do it with chemicals. So, and maybe just a wisdom. That's why people who are using chemistry are always sick. That's why they never change their lives. It's very hard for them to go to the next standard of their reality, because the chemistry, it gives you energy and it takes away energy. I like to compare it that if you need energy, like using chemistry, it's like going to a bank if you need money. Yeah? If you know that the bank can give you money, but the more you take right now, the higher is the percentage. And the faster you want the loan of energy or of money, the more quicker you'll have to pay it back. So any type of chemical drugs that gives you a boost of energy, afterwards, the payback is a lot higher and it always goes down. That's why people are fed chemistry. Even in the beginning of the 20th century, if you go to a pharmacy, 95% were made out of plants and out of nature. And right now, about 98% are made out of chemistry, and only 2% of products are plant-based. So that's why try to use Amanita. You can use it with other medicine plants, and if your friends or family, somebody stuck on some kind of a drug or alcohol or whatsoever, he's just in an energetic hole. And all he has to do is just to recover his energy. Once he recovers his energy, boom, he will go to the next reality. And Amanita helps you to feel comfortable when you're going through this change, because the reptilian brain is quiet, and even different addictions and different, let's say, biochemistry inside of the body will be a lot easier to overcome. Please.
I've read that Amanita is used to treat diabetes and type 2 diabetes. So how long is it possible to, do you need to take it like months to actually see results?
Yes, it's more than enough 1 month to see very serious results. If you especially have like diabetes, then it's good to ask of Amanita to help with diabetes. It will point out the things that you have to do, so easier to let go of diabetes. And most important, you have to understand what is the lesson behind diabetes, because it's a spiritual lesson. And once the spiritual lesson is learned, healing will happen.
Because I actually have a jar here.
Wonderful.
From like 2 weeks ago. And basically I was told that after 5 months, the effects drop by like 50%. So
Well, yes, I personally never used it for so long. And of course, if you use any type of plant for so long, no, it won't carry such a high effect. The main thing, as I said, is very important the first month. If you can do in the first month all of the right requests and actions, 1 month can be enough. If you need, you can go for 2 months. If you feel like it, you can go for 3 months. It's not an issue. It has.
I read that you could use it for years even.
Yes, you can use it for years, but the effect of development, it didn't come here to become, how is it called in English? In Russian language, a very nice word, kostili. You know, how?
Crutches.
Crunches, yeah. When a person is like broke something and crunches. Amanita doesn't want to be that. It can, but it won't. And it won't allow the person to use microdosing, like for so long. It won't allow to abuse it, because it's a very strong spirit, and the person will be just guided away from it. Something will happen. So anybody who tries to abuse it gets a punishment. And at the same time, it's very simple that people I'll give an interesting story so you would remember this wisdom about Amanita. Amanita, it's very, very, very simple. Be careful with what you ask for. Every word opens the opportunity for it to fulfill. That's why it's so important to ask the questions, practical, connected to your life, connected to the present moment, so there would be a change. And not to ask questions, how is the universe built? Who is God? You understand? This question brings no practical change to you here right now. By discovering this information, you won't have any transformation. You won't be happy from this. And eventually, you will also guide, let's say, the person where he asked for. So I think that was last week. I got a message with asking to comment. And there was a post about a guy who tried Amanita Muscaria, and he writes, so I already did like 10 journeys with Amanita Muscaria. My favorite journey is the death experience and the rebirth. So I just like to experience this. So now I tried 15 grams of Panther Amanita Muscaria. And then eventually he got his half-death experience where he broke his feet, his arms, and his head. And the picture was all of him like sitting, and he's still happy, like, and asking like, how come? And for me, you know, it's like this. Because the request that he writes, I love death experience. I have already 10 times experienced this. I want to discover it even deeper. So the person, and just a young guy, nobody explained to him that your words become real. He asked and he acted disresponsible. He already got 9 journeys where he got the answers, and yet he still goes and he asks for even more death. You get what you ask? So that's why the most important thing with Amanita is just to understand that it's simple, and of that simplicity, it can be dangerous. That's why people who don't know this fact about simplicity, about communication with it, can create for themselves big journeys, especially when people have a lot of pain inside, sub-personalities, doing it just for fun, without dealing it with respect and questions. He will just open whatever you say. And he has a good sense of humor sometimes. So I hope I answered the question. Please.
Thank you for the lecture. Very interesting topic. You know, there are some websites in Europe where you can order it online. Do you have an experience with it? Do you think it's a good idea? Can you recommend maybe some?
Well, just in case, I brought with me, I think I have like 9 or 10 microdosing like kits. If somebody will want, I will be able to sell it. Eventually, there's right now in Russia like a big amount of people who are started to gather and like to distribute. In Europeans, it is like still totally underground because people have no ideas on how to work with Amanita. Everybody knows it, but almost nobody gathers them and dries them. So generally, the best Amanitas that you can right now get is mostly or to go and gather yourself or from Russia. Because European websites and etc., well, there's very few. There's a Latvian one, yeah. Like mostly right now for the ones who have some kind of access with, let's say, with Russia or Russian speaking, that they started to use this information. And that's why I saw also a Latvian one. Eventually, soon, I right now was in Asia, that's why I didn't organize it, but I will have here in Estonia like a stash of good Amanitas. So eventually that if somebody will need it here, I will have the opportunity even myself to share. And for now, I can say you can just Google it, or best of all, you can look in Telegram groups. In Telegram, there's a very big Amanita Muscaria movement. There's groups which has like 50, 70,000 people. And there's very serious things like from the moment when we started the microdosing and we developed it, like this amount and etc., we were co-developing it 3 years ago here in Estonia with also other participants from Russia. And there are some friends here who were at the fundament of this experience. And eventually, right now, from that moment as we started to now, there's over 300,000 Russians that right now work and already healed from Amanita within 3 years. So it is just starting. The wave is just starting. In Russia, it's called like the Amanita wave. And here, it will be the same only to the west, but it will open within the next like 2-3 years. Please. The main ones that we use are dry ones. So I actually today went, oh, let me find. I actually today went to the forest and found some amanitas next to TTU. Right now the season is kind of finishing, but you still can go and find. And eventually, let me find. Let's say, if to speak a little bit about its design, the white dots which you see on the top, it's actually the egg. When it just started to grow, it's a white egg. Then it starts to grow, and the red just cracks the egg, and it becomes the upper pods. For fresh amanitas, the only thing that, let's say, is kind of deadly for a person is the ibotenic acid. But the amount of it, it's so less that, try to guess how much you need to eat fresh amanitas to get the deadly poison. 15. More than 15 kilos. If you eat 4 kilos of salt, then a person dies. If a person drinks on empty stomach 1 liter of vodka, he dies. Here, over 15 kilos of fresh amanita. If you dry them, you can eat them infinity. Nothing will ever happen. And in the whole history that we know, there was only one case when a person has died from fresh amanitas. I think it happened in 1892 in US with a 4-year-old girl that got lost in the forest, and for 4 or 5 days she was eating different mushrooms. No, including the amanita. And eventually after 4 days when everybody found her, she already died in the hospital. But she ate also other mushrooms. But from the scientific, this is the one and only case when amanita had a deadly dosage. Because it's impossible to eat more than 15 kilos to die from them. And once we dry them and we keep them for 2 months, they become like perfect. And we can use them then very easily in a microdosing way. Like, people ask me, how do you microdose if you don't have weights? For me, myself, I usually just use my finger, and from the pointy finger, 1/3, or let's say 2 nails, 2 of your nails, you just put, this is the size of the microdose. It's just like so small, just what you can rip up with your finger, what I have right now under it. This is enough. Most important is when you do it in the morning, have an empty stomach. Allow your biocomputer connected with your brain. So it's better to use it on empty stomach before the food. After, you can eat like in half an hour and it will be good. And if you develop a habit of going to sleep with an empty stomach, then and take some amanitas before the sleep, you will fall asleep quickly. You're going to have very beautiful dreams, and plus there will be very strong healing. Like, the best way how I recommend on my course, I educate people that they would organize their lives that would have intermittent fasting. So let's say that you would stop eating at 7, 8 o'clock in the evening, and the next time you eat is just in the morning. That before going to bed, your stomach would be empty, and through that, the effect of the sleep will be you will need less sleep, you will get more energy, and if you use amanita, you're going to have beautiful dreams. And through this microdosing before the night and in the morning, this is how I recommend. And if you don't eat after 7, 8 o'clock in the evening, be confident, you will heal tremendously. Only through the intermittent fasting with the combination of amanita, you will have very strong results in just reaching such energy that it will be everything easy for you. Okay? Please, please.
Yeah, could you repeat the process of drying without the dryer?
So without the dryer, it's simple that we would gather the caps, as I showed, and we would put these caps, for example, on a wire, yeah, and we would just hang it in our room where it's dry, and we would do it without direct sunlight. Because when sunlight falls, it destroys specific healing elements. So we do it in a dry place where the air is going. And usually then by this it takes like 3 days, like to dry them by your room temperature. And then when they're ready, you can like grab them and you will already see that they're good. That there will be like chips. Please.
Which mushrooms to pick? Like the caps are still like closed or open?
All of them are good. Like if you find, you just pick the ones and the big ones. Of course, the big ones have even more elements than the small ones. But at the same time, there's like many, many, many details about like, let's say, if you're, for example, gathering amanitas in a forest, the strength of the same mushroom can vary in 2 times. And the variety will be created that one amanita was grown inside of the forest and the other one on the edge of the forest. So the one that on the edge, it got sunlight. And through that, it got more opportunity to use it for the development of its healing properties. So for that reason, amanitas can vary, and the best thing is just to gather and to feel yourself. You have to understand that you're the king of your life. Your body is the best analysis about anything. Just pay attention, and you will feel and you will see. So eventually, just gather the amanitas, put them on the string, keep them for 3 days. They're crispy. Put them into a vacuum, into a jar or somewhere, and put them aside into a dark place for 2 months. Example, these amanitas, if I remember, they come from Siberia. So right now, everybody are gathering them, and now everybody are waiting for this 2 months. Like in old times, I right now came back from Switzerland, where I organized lectures and ceremonies with Amanita. Now we gather there a good amount of Swiss Amanitas, which we'll have dried, put them into a vacuum, and we're going to use them for our winter solstice. And there the community is quite big and growing very rapidly. Please.
What is the dosage for a single trip that you use? What is the
So for single trips, I'll just share from the very beginning that single trips is better to do it with someone. It's always good to have somebody for the first time that would assist you and help you. Because Amanita can guide so unbelievably that it will be very hard to distinguish, is it my journey or is it reality? When you're using psychedelic mushrooms, then you understand this is a psychedelic trip. With Amanita, when you're doing a journey, let's say the layer of reality in our consciousness becomes very thin. And you can have journeys in other realities where you would feel everything with your body like you feel here. You would see people and you would see things like here. And there's not a single, reason or thing that would tell you that it's a trip. So for that reason, I personally don't recommend to try high dosages without making the work with microdosing, because it can guide to a journey that a person won't be able to control, and that can just lead to different problems and issues. So if you decide to do it, it's good to have your sitter with you. It's very important to write out the questions. That the questions won't be like simple and general, but that they would be practical about your life and very exact. And then once you do the journey, it's important to know that Amanita, if we keep our eyes open, let's say, first of all, the shamans were all laying down, eyes closed. When our eyes are closed, our consciousness and energy goes on the inside. If we keep our eyes open, then the energy goes on the outside. So rather than going through your spiritual journey, your body will get a lot of power and strength. And people cannot control themselves often in that. And I cannot say that Amanita was used to create berserks, but like in old Viking times. But I can say that eventually it can open like the boundaries with a combination with some other plants. So for that reason, uh, I recommend, first of all, to get to know the mushroom with microdosing. Work yourself through. Then, when you will feel like it, then to make a journey. Best of all, if you have a sitter, best of all, if you have like a shaman, a person who knows how to do it. And then you approach it very seriously, sincerely. And if you do that, then Amanita can show such things which not a single other medicine plant will show, because simply other medicine plants don't have access to such a level of knowledge. And if other medicine plants can be tricky, they decide, oh, I'll show you this, I won't show you this and that. Then Amanita, it just gives. Mm-hmm.
But what do you,
So the dosage,
yeah,
so the dosage, so it depends on the person. You can have already the journey like from 7-8 grams. When I'm doing my ceremonies, I usually, no, depends on the person and the Amanita, like 14-15 grams. This is what I use. And I can say that everything that is above like 25 grams, it has no meaning because the effect will be the same. So putting simple, by consuming more, it doesn't mean that you're going to go on even a more deeper journey. Here, you can go on a journey even on a small amount if you ask the question and you're ready, especially if you fasted and prepared yourself. So in this way, it's quite individual. And as I said, it's very kind of important to see that the person during an Amanita journey, it can be as very peaceful that the person will be just lying and going through, like his journey. Or it can become very active, where a person won't be able so much to control himself, and he will be like a child experimenting around, that's understanding that he is the God consciousness and that everything around him is a part of him. So it's quite interesting to observe how a human can act in such ways.
I have a question about the cold ways that Amanita gives. Do you have a good tool for that?
Tools?
For the cold, the freezing cold feeling
Uh,
that Amanita can give.
you mean like the
The sense of cold.
the sense of cold?
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
it can be very freezing.
It can easily be. Sometimes it can be freezy. Sometimes it can be very hot. It doesn't have any specific way how it would guide the person. It guides everybody individually based on the request that it did. Sometimes, well, I had through the ceremony, like somebody asked for healing, and then eventually person, when you would think that the ceremony is over, the person only then finally opened up and he started to cry, and he couldn't stop crying like for 4 or 5 hours. The other ones would be just laughing and just playing like kids. The other one would understand and, Ik ben Jesus, I'm Jesus. And then everybody would be laughing because they're having the experience in which they literally understand what she means. So it's interesting, and at the same time, when you're for the first time on such a ceremony, it can look like an art house movie, where it's very important for the organizer to have like total peace, total love, total support, and at the same time strictness. That if it's needed, that let's say the organizer or in my case the shaman, that I have to sometimes bring the people down, like literally just tangle them up with my strength and put them down, because the experience that they're not understanding and not controlling until they end their bodies and experiencing something there, and here's a total different thing that they do. So with exactly spiritual trips, I recommend to do them carefully. And me personally, I don't want that the ceremonies would spread out, because I just saw too much. And if it's not done correctly, it will be a more traumatic experience than a positive experience. And I'm here for the healing. I want all of you with who I shared this wisdom, that you would heal and you would be happy, and that you wouldn't get no stupid traumas from clumsy experience, which came just from not knowing some simple things about a plant and a medicine, which has to be dealt with respect and has to be just studied step by step. Once you connect with the spirit and you understand and you have your relationship, it will be wonderful. It will be beautiful. It will be awesome. You will feel like when it's ready. But all of the answers and everything, they come through self-work. And they come every day. And why I'm for microdosing and not spiritual journeys, simply because microdosing is like 100 times safer. It brings higher results. You're not just during the ceremony, all this, patient, strong, and etc., but you're strong and patient through the whole month. And eventually it's better to be, in this God mood, not for one night, but the whole month. Yeah, in the beginning it will just increase, but then you enter it and that's it. You're gonna have like 2 weeks of such level and consciousness that deal with your things, what are important, and it will work. Please.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
thank you for sharing your knowledge in such interesting and accurate way. My question is that
Thank you.
would you recommend using Amanita prepared in a form of a tincture?
Mm-hmm.
Is it still beneficial? And if yes, then how? Thank you.
You mean that you approach it like a teacher?
As a tincture
Oh,
made with alcohol.
oh yes, got you. Yes, it's possible also to do it as a tincture. Most important, you have to know what is the amount of amanitas in this amount of tincture. And eventually, some people use it like in drops, that you can use them as with alcohol or just put it into your skin. There's such a way of also healing from it. To make a tincture, you just have to use specific methods, and it's healing. Everything that is done from Amanita, it's very healing. It will just do magic. Like if cream from made from Amanita Muscaria, it helps you to even to let go of wrinkles, or like of what the women are always dreaming of, like what all the L'Oreal are focusing. And here, I'll just tell you that the majority of world brands which are so famous, their best products, all of them have mushrooms. All of them have mushrooms. All of the top best products of all of this chemistry industry, all of them are using a specific type of mushroom for that product. So eventually, you can use Amanita as a tincture, you can use it as a cream, you can boil Amanita and then freeze the water of this boiling and it will have its healing properties. And you can dry it, and drying is the most oldest and the most effective way on how to keep it. Just keep it in a vacuum, and in a dried place. Like if you're planning to keep it like for half a year or more. And once you dry it, you can already consume it and no big issues. Just if you wait, it becomes 20–30% stronger. So, and with tinctures, there's different stories and different methods, but it's kind of, they sometimes start with 1 drop, next day 2 drops, and like 3 drops, and they go like up to 7 drops, and then they go down. So you can partly say it's kind of the same principle of microdosing, just using this method. I myself like to use the dry caps because I know the amount. Like for me, it's a lot easier to connect with my consciousness also with the mushroom. I can easily, like if I want, I can eat like this. If I want, I can make a tea. But it's all up to you. Most important that when you're using it, deal it with respect. Deal it with conscious approach. And then it works magically. Oh, I remember there was.
Yeah, I had a practical question.
Please.
So you mentioned when you collect the mushrooms yourself and you dry them, does they lose the potency over time? Or what's the, let's say, expiration date of the dried mushrooms?
So eventually, if you keep them into like in a vacuum and you use them, they can have healing effects well, we have to make even more exact studies, but more than 5 years. But eventually, already in the first year, if you wait, it eventually will have lower of its psychoactive components. The healing components will remain, but the psychoactive for the brain, it will lower down. So for
You still have to keep them like in a sealed package.
best of all,
Direct sunlight and
best of all, yeah. Sometimes, like my friends do, if you have a freezer, you can keep them into your vacuum and just put it into the freezer. It also works. Then they can stay even for a lot longer. But it loses like maybe 20% of the strength if you wait more than 1 year. Healing components remain, psychoactive lowers down. Mhm. So, step by step, yeah.
Sorry, yeah, this is a little bit related. Ayahuasca, do you have any familiarity with like the healing journey of that compared to the healing journey of Amanita?
Me myself, I think did 5 type ceremonies with ayahuasca with 3 very strong shamans from different parts of South America and Central America. And ayahuasca, it's something different. Like ayahuasca, as I told you during my speech, that spirits and animal and plants of power, they have different spirits. So ayahuasca, it has its own way and approach towards the person, and in many cases, it doesn't give the person direct answers. It mostly often guides him into the spiritual world, and eventually the person has to find his answers himself. And eventually, some people succeed, but many fail. And I have some friends who were literally for 7 years doing ayahuasca ceremonies with like different shamans throughout like 7 years, which gave them an experience of over 300 ceremonies, what they did. And eventually, it's totally uncomparable with Amanita. Just from the very first thing, got the answers, which not from the 300 journeys of the ayahuasca could have been given. For me, ayahuasca I respect it, but it's a playful tool. But Amanita, it's a very exact tool.
One more question. Should we pick only the caps or the stem as well?
So the stems have only like 20% of like the properties which the cap has. So that reason, what I do when I'm gathering, I eat the first fresh stems, like 2. And then if I want, I gather more with the heads. And when I come back home, I just cut them and fry them with butter and salt. And it tastes tremendous. Yeah, it's really tasty. It's like, I don't know, like fried chicken something. And eventually you can eat them and you will feel the effect. It won't be strong, but the effect will be there. So this is what I do. So if you want, you can gather them, and you can literally, if you want, you can freeze them into your freezer. Then once you want to cook and to have some healing, you just take them out, just cut them, fry them, and enjoy the results. So, any more questions? Oh, please.
Is there in your experience, a good antidote if the, for example, if the effect gets too strong, something to take it off?
Nope.
Black tea?
No. Well, if the person asks for something, he will go through it. That's it. If the person asks for it, he will go through it. He will have to go through it. There's no way to escape for what you asked. Only if, I don't know, you have, on the first place, a person who works with Amanita, with the energies, and makes the programming of Amanita. But yeah, so there's just different techniques which you can use in your journeys just to help yourself to be like self-focused and centered. Amanita doesn't bring you to bad journeys compared with magical mushrooms. Just the journey can have such information which will be just shocking, like for the consciousness. And I remember when we spoke with Mikhail, when he did his first such big journey with Amanita, he made the mistake of asking like a question on how the universe is built or how the world was created, and he spent a very long time there in his journey. Very long, like very long. In the physical world, he was like on a journey like for, I think, like 12 or 15 hours. But there he was like many, many years. I won't even say bigger numbers, so not to scare. But it can, you have to be just careful with what you ask for. Because not on all answers we want to know. And the most effective answers are the ones which us help here to really to develop, to make the next step in our present moment of life. This is the best way on how you can work with Amanita. Well, and maybe a technique, if you're ever, any of your friends is losing grab, like in a journey, and they're about to fall to a bad trip, as they say, then you have to take the consciousness of the person and to focus it on three things. You focus the attention of the person on something beautiful. It can be a plant, it can be a tree. Best of all, while we use fire, that's why in shamanic ceremonies, because fire is beautiful and the person just gets stuck with his consciousness there. Once the person sees beautiful, he starts to give his conscious attention there, and through that, in this beauty, starts to appear harmony. Because in beauty, harmony, it's one of the structures of it. If you start, let's say, if a person is sitting in his small apartment with his four walls, he's all stuck and afraid, then when he is outside in the nature looking at the trees and the sun, it will expand. So the beauty will calm down. Through the beauty, you start to see the harmony of everything. And through this harmony, a person starts to feel comfortable even in the biggest chaos. If we can focus our attention of our friend on something beautiful, he will go through this stage. You focus on beauty, you allow him to experience and to see the harmony of everything, and through that, the person will feel comfort. And he's free. No bad trip. Because the attention of the consciousness focused on beauty, comfort, and harmony. So this will be a small tool. So maybe one final question.
So we had a conversation about me being having autism, and done psychedelic, etc. Do you have an experience with autistic people when it comes to the mushroom during your ceremonies?
Well, I can say that on the first hand, like when I don't like when people are given actually diagnosis, like if, because when you give a person a diagnosis, for example, like autism or you're schizophrenic or this and that, then the person puts away his responsibility of his actions on the sickness. And the person starts not to understand that just a phase of his development, that he can heal from it and he can go to the next step. He just stays like on this place and just sits like, I'm schizophrenic, sorry. Like, I'm autist, sorry. It's okay, I'm autist. And the person creates for himself such a comfortable chair where he's on the podium, he can tell everybody, I'm sick, so ignore me, it's okay. And eventually the person, through this, stops to develop because he feels very comfortable in the position where he doesn't have to act, he doesn't have to develop, and he just allows his sickness, his diagnosis, to be his life. When eventually what usually Amanita does, and what does the spiritual plan teach, that we are free. And every sickness is just a part of your spiritual development. If anything came, it's just a phase, it's just a step. And you can always continue moving, and you can always heal if you connect with your soul. And if you allow your body to transform that pain, those limits, those emotions which were ignored, to transform them. And then truly magic happens. Because from my experience, there's no such thing that a sickness that you cannot heal. Every sickness is just a phase of certain path of knowledge. And if you ask me about like autists and what is the result that people just heal from the diseases which they thought they would never heal. And they finally become themselves. They stop associating themselves with their sub-personalities, with their traumas, with their diagnoses. They just become themselves, happy.
I think my question came because when we had a conversation, it sounded like it was like heavier than another trip because you're having autism, for example. But in the end, it's not like I'm referring to me, oh, I'm this or that. It's just who I am, you know.
Oh, I'm not speaking about you. I'm just speaking about how works our mind.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
This is how every person thinks.
Yeah, I guess the sensitivity comes again. But yeah, like for me, it's I see what you're saying. It's like you have your trip, no matter what diagnosis or who you are. You're having your trip and you're free.
I'll say, repeat. The person, if he asks for healing, Amanita might show him what will allow him to heal. Maybe there will be things that a person doesn't want to see. Maybe for him it will be hard to see it. But eventually, if the person asks for healing, he can receive it. The magic is done not by the mushroom, it is done by the request of our mind. We are the magic. Amanita just helps us.
Yeah.
And eventually, it all comes down to the individual path of the person. And you know, some people are very sensitive and they listen carefully. And you just whisper them a little bit the answer, and they will grab it and implement it. And there are people who are very stuck in their theatrical roles about who they are. And the only thing what will really help them is a really good kick. Well, not in the butt, but at least from the chair that they're standing and shouting everybody how bad they feel. And the person will eventually learn and see that he is not the chair, he is not the sickness, he's a free person. He can just go to the side and just live the life that he wants and develop that life that he strives for. So Amanita, in this sense, it is simple. It doesn't make you any nightmares and etc. Just simply, it can awake anybody who asks for it. And it will find that individual tool for the person which will allow him to awake, to let go of the limits of the mind. So I hope I answered the question.
Yeah, I mean, in the end, it's a trip, right? For any person, it doesn't matter who we are. So, so it wasn't a question that needed to be asked in the end, right? But I got the answer from your answer, so I had to ask it to get the answer.
Well, beautiful that you got and the question and the answer and give yourself another answer. Most important that from now on this answer will assist you in changing your life. That it will really help you to make the next step, and then the next time we meet you'll be more happy, you'll be more easy, you will have those things that you desire. I think this is valuable, but eventually what we receive would make a change. So, well, as you see, the topic is infinite, and right now, anybody, okay, I haven't even think, but I'll say like this. First of all, if somebody will want to stay in touch, I can add you to the Telegram group where I will eventually publish information about the English course, kind of in 2 words I share with you what it's about. There I will also eventually publish videos in English language about the work with Amanita and how it will be done. Thirdly, I took with myself some Amanita Muscaria, so the ones who want already to have a try and microdosing, I think I have like 9 or 10 kids here. Each one of them has 20 grams, which is exactly like a monthly dosage. Eventually, and the final one is, the price for the 20 grams is 30 euros. So if somebody needs, this is enough for 1 month of working. I personally inspire you right now to grab the moment like I did and gather your own Amanitas. So this stash, it will be priceless during all of the, let's say, every time when you will feel stress or anybody from your close ones are in a process that they cannot control themselves, and you just give Amanita and that's it. The magic will happen. Just explain simply and the results will come. And finally, I hope you enjoyed this information. I hope it was interesting for you. I actually haven't done like a donation box, but if somebody wants to support this work and then in the future there will be like more lectures and etc., you can do that. I'm open to that. I have a wedding next year coming, so I need to make some money. And eventually this is just a beginning of, as I say, the new beginning, in which every one us can choose which future reality he will have. Listen to yourself. Find the answers for which your soul came here for. And the rest, well, people call it magic. I call it work. I call it science. Science all about how our consciousness actually controls all of the reality. So let's enjoy the wonderful evening. Let's enjoy our wonderful lives. And let's get connected. And let's see what the years ahead will bring us. Use this knowledge and wisdom for yourself, for your families. Hope that next time when we're going to meet, you're going to feel more happy and you're going to have those things that maybe you don't have right now. And may the magic of our souls guide the path and all of us be surprised. As there's truly a great wisdom that we shouldn't know how it will happen exactly. That the surprise, this is what we truly came here for. So may life be a surprise to all of us. Okay, thank you. Mm-hmm.